I apologize for the delay. It is 2:15, June 11th, Budget, Finance, and Administration Committee. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We need to approve the minutes from May 29th. You should have a copy in front of you.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on this? Any corrections? Thanks, Glenn, we just got started. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay, so basically, we're just continuing where we left off on our FY 2018-2019 budget.
Madam Chair, if I may. One of the concerns that I had in our ordinance involving our economic development money, I would, there's a statement in there to where council can elect to take up to 99% of the fee in lieu of, and I would like to make a motion to remove that and keep it as the 66, 33, 1%, 66% to Oconee County, 33% to the school district, and 1%. And so I would like to remove that 99% contingency out of that ordinance.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion.
Second.
Any discussion on that?
Mr. Root, can you discuss about the changes that would make to that ordinance and what that would actually be, what that ordinance would read like once that gets struck?
I can.
And that doesn't affect what we have already voted and approved on. This is moving forward.
Correct. So it's contained within the budget ordinance. It's not a standalone or separate ordinance. It's in section 11 of the budget provisos. And what was added by way of amendment, in fact, these are two different amendments. One spelled out specific percentage, the first amendment, wherein Oconee County General Fund got 33%, the Economic Development Fund 34%, and the school district 33% of any revenues that we received, any fee revenues. That is what I'll call the default breakdown or takeaway. We added a sentence by way of a subsequent amendment, I want to say late in the year, that stated, let's see, simply, unless the particular MCIP, Multi-County Industrial Park Agreement, dictates otherwise and subject to any superior agreements, vis-a-vis for example, the High Point West, which has an automatic take from fee agreements. So we added this, unless the particular MCIP agreement dictates otherwise. It doesn't say 99%, but that sentence gave council leeway within the particular agreements to say, for this park revenue, we'd like the county, the Economic Development Fund, and the County General Fund to receive X versus the default takeaway. So your amendment, as it goes forward to council, if that's approved and council approves it, would just simply strike that sentence and make the default really the only applicable provision, which again would be 33% to the Economic Development Fund, 33% to the General Fund, 34% to the Economic Development Fund, and 33% to the school district.
Correct.
So what was the sentence we were striking out again? One more time?
Unless the particular MCIP agreement dictates otherwise. So what you'll have then is what has historically been, whenever we do a multi-county industrial park agreement, usually says in there as far as the revenue, how it's distributed pursuant to whatever governing ordinance that the counties have. And so the governing ordinance would be the budget ordinance, and it's going to be this default percentage, 34, 33, 33. So as opposed to us inserting a different percentage in those, essentially you'd be taking away that ability and going with the default percentage.
Okay, so what's the disadvantage of leaving it the way it is?
I don't have, I guess that's a policy, I think, decision. For legally, I don't have an objection to leaving the way it is or taking it out. The disadvantage to leaving it the way it is, it would be allowing a clear avenue to take more than the default. The advantage of taking it out makes it clear that you're going to take the default. I guess it'd be the best way I could state that.
my biggest reason for the motion is a little bit easier to plan a budget around the default, because there's been two projects that have came up that we have elected to take the majority, actually all, I think it's 99% of those on those two cases with Hartwell Village and,
Wasn't Baxter one that we took?
no.
Borg Warner.
Borg
Borg
Warner
Warner?
project that we, and so as it stands right now, we're 2 for 2 on that. And, you know, what I kind of feel like we're doing is we're taking revenue that normally is divided among the general fund, economic development, and the school district of Oconee County. Somebody's going to come up short here, and then it's going to get to the finger pointing time. I believe that as both entities to work together, yes, we are putting a lot of money out there toward economic development, which was the reason that I officially proposed to the school district that we would change the percentages around. And at that time, everybody was happy with that, with the understanding that we continue to invest in economic development and industry in our area, while they would continue to move forward with workforce development. When the change happened and we've taken 99% twice, there is some huge concern among the school district that additional operating revenue that they need to actually train our workforce and educate is going to go away, and is going to lead to additional tax hikes, which is what nobody wants, especially the school district. So that is my reason for that motion, to have a standard default like we had discussed.
Any other comments on that? Okay, no more comments? So we have a motion and second to change the way our ordinance is written as far as the allocation of industry or economic development funds to the general fund, to economic development, and to the school district. All in favor of this change?
Aye.
Aye.
Madam Chair, what I'll do, similar to the previous changes that we've had as the budget has worked through, I'll have the language highlighted and show the difference, because of course the full council will have to adopt the amendment on
Yeah,
Tuesday.
I'm still confused though as to how is that going to impact the ones that we had changed, like Borg Warner and,
It will not, those ordinances
that's
are
a
out
done deal?
there, and I can, just for comfort level of everybody, I'll add language to the effect that it's prospective only. It would be, but I'll make that very clear.
okay, well, that's fine.
Non-retro. That's what you're, non-retroactive, so it's moving forward.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. That's fine. Anything else?
Yes. Madam Chair, I brought up at the last council meeting the capital equipment replacement schedule, and I passed out that to council at the last meeting. You asked that we not discuss it during that meeting, so here we are. The shortfall for this fiscal year, based on this recommended capital vehicle / equipment schedule, is $1,457,500, and those are needs that are expected in this fiscal year that have not been budgeted for. And I know that's a big chunk of change. I'm not talking about this flippantly at all, but it's something that we have not addressed, and I feel like if we don't address it now, it's going to fester and grow into next year, and then it's going to be a very substantial need for fiscal year 2020. That's projected to be almost 3.1 million, and so you take what we're funding this year, roughly 1.3 million, and you take the shortfall of almost 1.5 million, and you add that to the 3 million, almost 3.1 million for next year, subtract the 1.3, and that's going to be a large shortfall for for the fiscal year 2020. Over $2 million, if my math's correct. I'm kind of just doing this on the fly. But it's going to be a substantial shortfall. And I don't think we have the luxury of burying our heads in the sand or kicking the can down the road. If we don't address this issue, it will grow. It's a large number. And, you know, there's possibility, I'm sure, that some of these vehicles will last longer than we expect, but I have full confidence that our vehicle maintenance team, Mr. Beck and others in our departments have not done this analysis without putting a lot of thought and experience behind it. And I just, you know, I hope these vehicles last 1 million miles, but history tells us they're not going to last 1 million miles. There's a number of them in here that when they get to be 200,000 miles, I mean, that seems to be the rule of thumb, maybe even earlier than that. But I know any vehicle I've ever driven that's gotten up that high, you really start noticing things rattling and shaking and rolling, and that's good in dancing, but it's not good when you're driving down the highway. So I think we need to discuss it, and I think we need to take some action on this in this fiscal year to avoid compounding the issue for next fiscal year.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
I got a quotation here. Obviously, this document will be updated every year and subject to change. We'll continue to find ways to repurpose salvaged vehicles to eliminate unnecessary purchases. We will stretch the purchase as many years as possible, but this will depend especially on maintenance requirements for each vehicle and each piece of equipment. And that was by Mr. Scott Mulder last year. So he's saying that we're going to stretch these and what we're going to salvage what we can when we sell these vehicles at auction.
So how much is that expected to bring?
Last year it was 40-some-odd thousand. Is that correct? How much?
All right.
Actually, is that okay with you? I'll just make sure you're good.
Good afternoon, council. Actually, to answer your question, last year, the auction revenue brought in $85,000+. Okay. 2 years before that, we did, I think it was 62,000. Okay. So what you read to me, that quote, spot on. Okay.
Do what?
That's spot on, that quote you read. Okay. Me and Mr. Mulder talked about it, and there's a few things that you have to take into consideration when dealing with vehicles and automotive, and that is, he said, anything can change at any time. Let me give you a good example. This year we've had, and I do have that figure I gave Liddell, $176,000 worth of vehicle accidents, fire trucks. We've had a few totaled vehicles in the sheriff's department. Nothing uncommon, okay? With a fleet of, you know, roughly 700 vehicles and equipment, you're going to have some of that. The problem is that the older, especially the sheriff's department, they start getting up 200,000 miles. You don't want to use that vehicle for a emergency situation. They're meant to get there, and they're meant to get there in a timely fashion. Okay, 200,000 miles, you're stretching it. Mr. Davis, you were right. You're going to have things come apart. Mr. Kane, you can't rely on that vehicle to perform over 200,000 miles day in and day out 12 hours a day. Okay, at that time, you do want to think about replacing. If you look up on your list that you were given for next year, I'm gonna get that pulled up. I have that in front of me. Good example is a 2018-2019 year. You'll see that there are 11 vehicles that we have set out for replacement. If you look at the mileage, you will see that there's roughly, your leading mileage is 197,500 miles, and that is current mileage. That's not projected. That's current. If you talk about the new budget year, we're talking about we're talking close to 7 months, 6 months to getting a replacement vehicle by the time you order. The new budget's passed, we get the money available, we order the vehicle comes in, and we outfit it. Okay, we do all the outfitting in-house, so we have made that happen a whole lot quicker. Right? But the year of those vehicles, the oldest one is a 2000 model. Okay, now that 2000 model, it only has 173,000 miles on it, but it's a 2000 model. It's in the sheriff's department. Okay, we have moved it out of a pursuit vehicle down, and we've downgraded it down through the line. Okay, these vehicles that you see, and you're not seeing this, they are going to be your SRO vehicles. Okay, 200,000 miles, they're going to be your SRO vehicles. That means they have to be reliable enough to get to that school every day to protect those children. They should have been my spares. My spares that I keep on the lot now will have to go another year. We can do it, but what that does is it makes your vehicle maintenance money increase every year. And I gave Mr. Martin, a piece of paper earlier. From last year to this year, we've had to add $162,250 to your vehicle maintenance budget across the board for each department. That will continue to happen more and more and more the older the vehicles get. Okay, now keep in mind, your vehicles stay newer, less repairs, that amount will go down. It's a seesaw.
Yeah, but it's a far cry from 1.5 million.
I agree.
Okay, so that's where the seesaw,
All right, so that's fine. Let me stretch forward and tell you where the largest chunk of this occurs. And it occurs where it's very important. And if you go down, we've got some in roads and bridges, which has been set aside for quite a long time. But what I want to first talk about is your fire departments. Okay, you have to remember in 2000, 2001, I believe that's right, Liddell, we purchased 11 fire trucks one year, 10 fire trucks the next year. There's no way we could replace 21 fire trucks in 2 years right now. Not the cost of a fire truck. Back then, the fire trucks were $178,000 a piece. Now they're close to $340,000. Okay, so that time is coming. And what we're trying to do by laying out as I'm going to call it, a 3-year, and the reason being is because I want to keep it practical. That 3-year, we're trying to look ahead and look forward so we don't get caught in the shortfall. And that's why it's important to us. All right. If you notice down in, and I'll give you a really good example, again, in your solid waste department, you'll see a 1997 Cobelco in red lettering. We had a fire happen to a piece of equipment 4 years ago. At that time, money was not available to purchase a new equipment with that insurance money adding money to it. The money wasn't there. We had no choice. This is what feeds our mulch grinder at the landfill. I had one in surplus. I needed some work. We took it out of surplus. We put it back in service, and it has run 4 years. Thank you. To maintain our mulch progress, but it is in its end. It will probably expire this year, to the point where we may have to put $40,000, a new engine or a new pump, in it to keep it going. The machine may be worth $10,000. Does it warrant putting that money into it to keep it going maybe another year and another catastrophic failure. So at some point, we have to cut our losses.
One of the things that I had brought up at a council meeting was talking about the maintenance on these vehicles. And this kind of speaks a lot to the reason why we're buying a new rock crusher instead of continuing to Band-Aid the one that we have. And we know the performance that we're going to get out of, these Crown Vics. These were some of the greatest vehicles Ford ever made, and they ran forever. And you sit there and look, and I was just averaging, 27,000 miles a year is what they're averaging on there. So you're talking about next year when this comes around, 230, 240. I mean, so like you said, I drive a truck. I'm sitting up here. I drive a truck with 147,000 miles on it. But I also know when I go to Columbia or different places, it's not my truck that I'm driving. It's my wife's car. So she gets to drive my truck with 147,000
That's
miles.
exactly right.
And it makes all kinds of noises and things, but it's part of it. It is transportation, gets me to and from work every day. And again, one of the things that I bring up is the cost to maintain these vehicles is getting astronomical from what I can see, because there's no way that you're not putting money after money and, 160, 170, and we're using these vehicles. I mean,
Absolutely,
I know
every day.
there's been citizens that have stated on here that we're buying new vehicles before there's time to buy new vehicles. And based on everything that I've ever seen, this county does a great job at using things to the last minute. And how in the world we get $85,000 out of an auction, I know it does there, but I was asking Mr. Kane earlier, I said, wonder what you get out of a 2011 Crown Vic with 225,000 miles.
About $1,000 if that.
About $1,000. So I guess it turns, the good thing is it's been maintained in there. And, I think one of the things that I sit there, and we can either be a council that adds to the problem, or we can be one that starts to create a solution. And we're not going to fix any of the things overnight. And I don't think Mr. Kane's sitting here saying we need to put, $1 million+ into this, but there's got to be some type of plan to fix this. Otherwise, we've given sheriff's raises, which is needed, but the car they're driving in is not going to get them to where they need to go. So what does that do to our citizens? That's the things that we got to think about is what's the solution here? Not, everybody uses to kick the can down the road. The can is smashed in the middle of the road and is flat. And, we're there. So let's create a solution. We're not going to fix it overnight, but there's got to be a plan in place to get us to where we need to be. And I think that's the council that we need to be today.
I believe it being proactive at this. I'm not coming to you with needs that aren't there, okay? Mr. Hart, you were at the sale. You saw what some of the equipment and what kind of shape it was in. We use it, and I repurpose it the most we possibly can, all right? Not only that, we purchased, Sheriff Crenshaw needed a couple extra SRO vehicles that we just didn't have. We went down to surplus. We utilized federal surplus. We bought a 2011 Crown Vic with 11,000 miles on it and one with 47,000 miles on it. Okay, we can buy those. We have the equipment, everything to put on. In fact, I'm proud to say that all except the partitions in it, they're completed. They've been striped, decaled, lit. They're ready for service. Okay, we will repurpose absolutely everything we can. We will purchase from federal surplus. We have. I have a full list. Anytime you want to see it, at my office, I keep a list of how much I've spent, what kind of repair costs we've had, and I believe and don't quote me on this, I have to have my records in front of me, spent roughly $55,000, and I appraised all of those, and we have roughly about $160,000 worth of piece of equipment we've actually purchased for $55,000. Okay, so I will utilize anything. It doesn't matter if it's a lawnmower, if it's a tractor trailer, if we can use it and it is feasible, we'll do so. But a lot of this stuff, you can't just go down to your federal surplus lot and hope for a newer dozer, that you can get parts for and that's reliable to put in service to take place of the one you have. Unfortunately, sometimes you do have to buy the new equipment. And that's what it takes.
I have one simple question, and maybe it was just me missing it. The other day, I saw road crews towing a very expensive piece of equipment with a very non-expensive truck.
Okay. I know what that would be.
And I don't even, I didn't hear a Jake brake or anything. Maybe I'm wrong in thinking that, but I'm just, is that
If
the
what,
tow?
if what you saw moving locations, you probably saw the mulch grinder moving a different location, and that is a very expensive piece of equipment. If it was moving from a place to get worked on down the road several miles, 15, 20 miles, we were pulling it with an old tractor, okay? And that is one of the things that you'll see highlighted in red in your list, and that's a 1986 Mack Model R truck. 150,000 miles. Now, it doesn't have a whole lot of miles only because that vehicle was meant to go from point A to point B, all right? Doesn't have any air conditioning. The guys don't really complain about it. We want a truck that's functional. We want a truck that works. However, that same truck also hauls equipment to Columbia, okay? Been to Newberry to take back some of our federal equipment that were on loan, forestry. And we have had to go all the way down as far as Lawrence to unstack the gears out of it on a Friday afternoon to try to get it home. Okay. Again, we talk about reliability. Some of these vehicles just don't stay in county. But that is highlighted in red. It's a 96 Mack. It's asset 1000.01. And if you notice in there, I did not ask for a new tractor. I asked for a used tractor to save money. Okay, $85,000 will buy a fine used tractor, whereas $130,000 would buy you a new tractor. Just don't see the need for it. Now, like I say, it's to pull things with. We don't use it every day. So a lot of the vehicles you see are on a need basis. They're not generalized, and I don't believe in generalizing because Sheriff Crenshaw needs emergency vehicles to get to emergency locations quickly. Something reliable, it's going to get them there. Assessor's office, and I'm not using them just because, if they have a need for a vehicle and they go out and it doesn't start, fine, we'll be on the way, they have another one to get in. Okay? That's where the differences lie. So everything's in as needed basis. Yes, sir.
This Mac's got 150,000 on it. It's supposed to get something like 1 million miles before it's supposed to be rebuilt. Is that correct?
Roughly. Now, again, you're talking about the engine. You're not talking about the transmission, the rear end, the brakes, the clutch, the frame. As you know, a truck takes a lot of abuse, metal fatigue, and moving back and forth, especially in off-road conditions. So can you keep it together forever? We can keep it together for a long time. Do we outweigh the benefit and the money? Do we spend the money now, or do we spend it later?
Probably later.
Maybe in some cases. I'm not going to disagree with you in some cases. But 9 times out of 10, again, if you get in that truck, and if you were to ride with me to Columbia in that truck and take a piece of equipment down there, you'd also understand, that we slipped a gear. And now we've locked it out because there's wear in the transmission. We can put a new transmission in it. There are parts and pieces for that truck because of its age that are becoming obsolete as well. That's one thing we all need to talk about. Piece of equipment gets so old like that, you do have some obsolete parts. The F800 dump trucks, single axle dump trucks, we have run into brake spider brackets. Can't get them anymore. We've actually had to get rid of a truck just because of that. We haven't had a choice. You can't trust they don't make any aftermarket parts, and I'm not going to trust somebody else's welding ability for the safety of our employees. Because if that bracket breaks, you lose brakes, period. So there is a point to where you can't get parts. And that's something we need to look at. You don't want to spend $25,000 on a truck. Next week, you can't get a part to drive it down the road. It just wouldn't make sense. But I agree with you. There is some stuff, and believe me, I have no problem stretching this stuff out as far as we can. It is on an as-needed basis.
Any other questions?
I've got one. So, and I know this, have you seen this sheet, Mr. Beck?
I have not
Okay.
seen that.
It's showing our capital vehicle replacement that's budgeted for this year, which includes 400,000 for sheriff's vehicles, 20,000 for communications, 75,000 for
I'm
fire,
aware.
375,000 for a fire truck, $5,000 for a High Falls mower, 35,000 for South Cove vehicle, 25,000 for airport, 350,000 for fire truck. And that was the total requested was 2.74 million. And with all those in there, you subtract what we actually budgeted those out. And it's showing remaining funds of 1.45 million.
Okay, please keep in mind that that tug for the airport is a added new piece of equipment. That is not any replacement. So again, this doesn't cover new vehicles. This is just replacement only, but it is not part of the replacement.
So we got 1.45 in, this says remaining funds needed. Is this a request or is this a need, is what I'm getting at? Because,
This is, based on what I'm seeing in front of me and that, how I know the vehicles, this is a need. This isn't a request. I'm not gonna come to you and ask you for $1.5 million if we don't need it, okay? Again, you'll see, a good example of that roads and bridges, in roads and bridges, that is in red. You know how many, that's been in red for 3 years. Okay, we keep procrastinating, putting this off and putting this off. And we're trying to be proactive, and by doing so, we're gonna be in a downfall when it comes to absolutely, we don't have a choice, and then we're going in emergency funds trying to figure out where. That's why it's so important for us to budget the money needed now and needed over the next 3 years. And the only reason I'm talking about 3 years is because, again, I don't think I can give you a realistic number, 10 years. It's gonna change, and I can't be honest with you. I can be honest with you for 3 years. Okay, and I can tell you what we're gonna need.
Okay, we have another issue that's going to enter into play. On Friday, I received an email from the Fire Commission, and they plan on completely revising their capital equipment replacement schedule. They weren't available yet, or they weren't done with it yet to come and do a presentation today, but they said they were going to have a presentation for the next law enforcement committee meeting. If you recall, several months ago, the Fire Commission requested 3 trucks, then 4 trucks, then 2 trucks and some people. And I finally told them they really need to go back past, present, and future and look at, where they are, where they're going. Mr. Martin, I don't know if you recall or know, but when Mr. Mulder first came in 2010, he was tasked with creating a fire plan. And part of that plan included essentially getting rid of our fire contracts with the municipalities over time, which was not a popular option from the council's perspective. We thought having those relationships with the municipalities were important. But the idea in that original fire plan was that the funds that were going to the municipalities would then go to our county fire service, which would have given them a huge influx of money, obviously. And so if you were to ask them now, they would still love for us to go back to the original plan. Although I think if you were to ask us, I'm not sure we're in agreement there. And having discussed that with them on at least 5 different occasions, they agreed to go back and take a comprehensive look at what their needs are. And I think any decision we make has to include that proposal that they're going to be
Absolutely.
coming to us with.
And part of me putting together, part of fire was getting with Chief King and talking with him. As of 2 weeks ago, I was in agreement with the plan that we have. Now, if this is going to change, absolutely. Then if we're going to change how many frontline engines we have in a house, Absolutely. That, I believe we need to
And
look
some of
at
the
that change.
biggest expenses come from their
Yes, ma'am.
area.
Absolutely. That's right.
So, you know, it would have been possibly useful if that information was available today for us to make a decision, but that would be a huge,
And I will,
part of the
you know,
plan
if that changes, we need to go back and we need to revamp the fire side of this and the rescue side of this. I agree with that. As far as the roads and bridges, you know, which is another one of our big things, I can tell you that I've talked with Mr. Kyle Reed and Mr. Lago, Mr. Martin, and we all do agree, that this is something that's overlooked and we do need to find a way to do this, so that, you know, the county employees in this county have a reliable piece of machinery to work with. I mean, if it goes down, we're down for days, weeks. You know, we talked about getting gravel up this morning. We were able to do so because that piece of equipment was up and running. That, we need to continue to be able to do that.
Just so I'm not whispering sitting up here, my question to Mr. Kane, and I guess y'all can answer. So the 2019 on the fire, we have two needs on that, and we're addressing both of those needs correctly, as stated in the funding one under the standard budget of 375, and we're funding another fire truck at 350 currently, correct?
That is correct.
So that answers the need for, well, we're still truly, I guess, down one because we got the rollover from 2018. Is that correct?
Is that one that's yet to be delivered yet?
Yes, we did have one rollover from what I'm hearing.
That's
So we
correct.
needed three, we're replacing two.
Well, we needed the two, okay, which is what you see there. We're rolling over the one, so that will be a total of the three.
Right.
That's
But
correct.
that, the majority of that's already been funded, right? And it's just gonna be delivered in fiscal year 19, correct?
That should be correct, yes.
Okay.
As far as I know, that the rollover truck, we have not ordered that truck. Okay, there was some discrepancies on what that departmental needs were for that truck, and you know, so they have not yet ordered that truck.
But it's already,
but it's
It
been
is funded.
it's
funded.
already funded, budgeted.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Funds should be there.
So that
So-
you were looking at the one plus the one more.
Correct. So that's realistically the only vehicle replacement plan that we've met the needs of.
Yes, sir.
And then fiscal year 2020, it's showing 3 fire truck, well, and this is just within rural fire, not.
This is, rural fire is all your fire trucks. Now, I have a different place for rescue, but this
Right.
is all your fire trucks, yes, sir.
So, I mean, these are the big ticket items, so that's, 340 times 3, that's 1.
If you look down at the
oh
bottom, it
02.
actually, at the bottom of that category in the blue stripe, it
Okay.
actually tells you per department. I
Okay.
broke it down that way.
Okay, so fiscal year 2020, that's a little, almost 1.1 million. I don't want to see a tax increase at all. I'm not put up here, I wasn't elected to do what I want to do. And, I mean, the numbers are the numbers. We can kick the can down the road another year and hope that vehicles begin lasting for 300,000 miles. Or we can take a realistic budgetary approach to this and say, these vehicles are probably not going to last that long, based on,
But you also have to consider the fact that in, 2 years' time, that large capital replacement lease is going to end? And so, shouldn't we be able to roll that over? And have a new capital replacement lease? Mr. Mulder had spoken to us about that, and I tried to jot down notes, but in all honesty, I'm not sure I completely understood how that works.
Madam Chair, if you do a capital lease, please remember that you might do that capital lease for $3 million. but that's only for the 1 year, okay? Does it help? Absolutely. But it doesn't, it's not a fix, okay?
Okay, well, help is good also.
No, I agree, no, absolutely.
A fix is better.
Help is good also.
No, help is good also, but
Madam Chair. That lease is up in the year of 2021. The last payment is October 1st, 2020.
2020. And what did he talk about when he said you can make the payment in arrears?
If there's savings in the 1920 year, you know, it may be that we can call and get the payoff and go ahead and pay that off. So then that would free up the 2021 year. We have done that with the smaller ones in the past.
I think the biggest problem with capital vehicle replacement is it's not the pretty side of government. No council member wants to sit up here and, well, I bought 20 vehicles. They want to talk about the wonderful, the parks and the fire stations, and they want to talk about that stuff. And this is truly the part of being on council what makes it difficult, because this is part of, our job is to come up with solutions for stuff that's not always popular. Because, I agree that nobody's going to sit here and say, thanks so much that was nice having that nice sheriff's vehicle to be able to get to my house quickly when that person was breaking in. But I can guarantee you that same person's going to stand up here and say, it took 27 minutes for that to break down. That person to get to my house. And when we tell them, well, it broke down 3 times on the way there. And, those are the things that I'm seeing out there. And it's just like we're hauling expensive equipment, that newer equipment. That's what I was getting at. I don't think it was the mulch thing. It looked like a pretty expensive bulldozer area on the back of some of these trailers and trucks that, what happens if something tears up? What happens if that truck, and that's the things that I look at is this is not beautiful stuff that the citizens are going to pat you on the back and say, great job fixing this vehicle replacement plan. But it truly is one of the most important things that you need. In this county, there's things going on under the ground that people aren't fixing until there's a problem. And we're seeing the problem down the road, and it's not going to fix it overnight. We're not going to sit here and say $1.5 million, I'm going to write you a check tonight. And we're reminded up here it's not our money. And I don't think any person sitting up here, and I take that from Mr. McCall, because I think a lot of that, it's not our money. But it's also part of fiscal responsibility to sit up here and come up with a plan on how to operate this county properly and not, and I'll say it again, the can is smashed. We can't
It's
kick it.
smashed, but you can't just get another 1.5 million to our budget right now.
And I'm not-
on the backs of people who cannot afford it.
And I'm not suggesting that, but those,
So what are you suggesting? What is the plan then? I'm open to plan suggestions
Well,
right now.
we're doing this at the last minute, unfortunately. I'm not the chair of this committee, and I just know that this is a problem that's been lurking out there, and nobody wants to talk about it. So I don't have a plan. I know we need $1.5 million for this year. That's what Mr. Beck's telling us. That's what Mr. Mulder told us for years. It's not a secret, but nobody wants to talk about it. Everybody
we're
wants to say, well, I
talking
hope
about
it
it
turns
right now.
out better in the future. Well, I do too, but we have to plan this fiscal year's budget. And I don't know, do you want to put any money towards capital vehicle replacements? Do you want to put no money? I'm just raising the issue. This is a problem. We're the people to fix it or to kick the can down the road. The buck stops here. It stops here.
Well, don't get angry with me.
I'm not getting angry with you. I'm upset that it's June 11th.
I know, but look
Fiscal
how
year
much you did
starts.
add to the budget. 400 worth of sheriff vehicles. What exactly is the 20,000 for communications?
It's a server
It's a what?
type.
Or the radios,
Yeah.
I'm sure that's what that sounds like. Maybe if it's a server, it's for, get better radio service throughout the county.
Okay, so that's not a vehicle, though.
No, ma'am.
Okay, that's what I thought it was. Okay, 75,000 for fire, 375 for one fire truck, 350 for another fire truck. High Falls mower, I'm sure we can do better than that $5,000. And the South Cove vehicle for 35,000 and the airport for 25. We've added a lot to this budget. We really have.
And I'm not sitting up here saying that we haven't. And that's, the hard part about all of this is, and I'm not sitting up here proposing, that 1.5 at all. And I truly don't think Mr. Kane is. The issue is here's the problem. From last year to this year, we made a lot of changes in the budget last year just to balance it. We moved everything from our debt millage over just so we didn't have a tax increase last year. And the way that I look at that is, and I was in favor of that strictly from a standpoint of it took some time to get everything in line to where I could see it. And I'm not going to come in my first year and think that I can fix everything. And I'm not in here in the second year, and I'm not saying we're going to fix everything, but I'm not going to be the one just to kick it down the road, because what's going to happen, this is a compounding dollar figure. And it's just like owing money on a credit card. You can make the minimum payment, and the budget, it still continues to grow every single time. And that's the things that, again,
Okay, but
this
what
is.
I'm not hearing from you is what you would like to see happen. Would you like to add 1.5 million? Would you like to pick a few vehicles that are truly falling apart that we can add those? There's got to be a strategy here, and that's what I'm not hearing.
Well, I came up with a strategy on how to help with the fund balance, because you asked me that question. So I'm going to ask your advice on this one, what you think about fixing this. What do you see?
Well, I wanted to wait to hear from the fire service, since their vehicles are the most expensive in the
We
group.
got them.
I know we got them. I know we got
they're-
them. But
they're-
they're part of the future expenses that you see over time. And
This is this upcoming fiscal year, 1.45 million shortfall.
okay, so,
Madam?
yes.
Um,
I'm sorry, we didn't really get anywhere.
This can that's been kicked down the road and it's smashed. Me and Mr. Davis, we wasn't here to do much kicking or smashing. So I'm gonna throw that ball to Mr. Kane and let him go ahead with it.
So we haven't fully funded it to date, I assume. Is that correct?
That would be, yes, sir, we believe
Okay.
that's correct.
Does anybody have an idea of when the last time we fully funded this was?
As far as fully funded, it's in 2017 was when we done the $4 million lease, and that done a good bit. But as far as fully funding, I don't think it ever has.
Okay. So, again, I was on here, as was Ms. Kamick, over the past going on 4 years, Mr. Hart. Unfortunately, this money's due, is needed for this fiscal year, upcoming, okay? Are you on council now? Mr. Davis is on council now, are you? Okay. So let's come up with a solution instead of, there's a lot of things that we can blame on prior councils. A lot of decisions I would have liked to go back, knowing the outcome, and undo them. There's a lot of things, a lot of money in the ground that we're not seeing a return on. There's a lot of money in the ground that has cost us a lot of money. But this is a pretty cut and dry issue. And we can, yeah, I'll take blame for it. It's Paul Kane's fault. 1.45 million. You're welcome. So now, let's reach a solution.
Well, to start with, didn't you say we have 11 vehicles at 35,000?
There was, for the sheriff's department, 11 vehicles, $35,000 apiece, yes, sir.
That comes up to be about 338
86,000.
or
385.
85.
85, okay.
Then you got 160 for maintenance. We're looking at a million, $500,000.
Now, please keep in mind that vehicle maintenance money
Mm-hmm.
allotted to that department is to keep all the sheriff's departments, not just 11 vehicles. That's to do that department for the year. Yes, sir.
That's not just the sheriff's department.
That is just the sheriff's department, but that is for their whole fleet, not just 11 vehicles like we were just talking about a minute ago.
In other words, you need roughly $500,000 for the sheriff this year.
No, sir.
385.
It'd be $385,000 is
Well,
what's
you said
budgeted
then
for 11
another
vehicles.
160 for maintenance to keep them up.
That is to maintain them. That's correct. Yes, sir.
Well, you have to add that together with the cost, don't
Yes,
you?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Just to, follow, Mr. Kane, you said how long this, have we been doing this, fully funding this? Me and Mr. Mulder worked on this for 16, 17 year is when we put it in place to try to foresee what was going to happen, especially with our fire trucks coming up that I spoke about. And with a fleet this large, you have to foresee. You have to plan, you have to budget. And that's part of what made us sit down and do this. Because it was 16, 17 year, we didn't fully fund it. But I believe this is something that really needs to be looked at. Like I said, with over 700 pieces of vehicles and pieces of equipment, absolutely, you have to start looking at that.
And didn't you also say that you need the figures from the fire department and the emergency services?
Yes, sir.
To make this figure go up or
Go
adjust
down,
it?
vice versa. Like I
Right.
said, as of last week, in me and Chief King's conversation, that's where it is. If the numbers are going to change, I'm in full agreement. I need their master plan that they're going to change to fall with that.
In other words, we can kick the can down to the road until we get that information from them. Is that correct?
Again, I don't know. Yeah, that's correct. I don't know if it's going to
Okay.
go up or if it's going to go down.
The
I hope
budget,
it
the
goes
budget's
down.
due June 30th, Glenn.
Yeah,
So
so we can't kick it down
you're
too
kicking it
far.
up against a wall right now. All right, so if we looked at, we've got the two fire trucks, 375 and 350. We're adding that into there. That's going to add back into the vehicle replacement plan unless we spend that money elsewhere the following year, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, so.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
The fire truck, the 375 and the 350 that we've funded this year. So as long as we don't spend that money next year, you've added that money into the vehicle replacement plan properly. So, this poor little can, man, I tell you what, we've been on it tonight. It's like Julian Davis at a council meeting, everybody's on it. So, I'm looking at somewhere in about a meal and a half would be 807.
About 1.75 is what I'm coming up with. 1,000,075.
1.5 mil is?
Oh, 1.5 mil? I'm sorry. Is that correct? Be 806,418.
Okay. So you're looking at 385 for those vehicles listed on there from sheriff. And we're looking at 560 from your roads and bridges. gonna get my iPad out and do my math. I know. That's 945. So you're still $100,000+ short. My reason why I bring that up is again, we're gonna add to the problem, or you're gonna work out a solution, just like we did with the fund balance. We came up with a long-range plan, not we'll wait till next year. We'll wait till next year, because I'm not blaming
But that's
anybody
not,
that
the
sits up here.
difference between the fund balance issue is you didn't add to the tax burden in order to resolve it. You didn't add to the average citizen's tax burden in order to resolve the fund balance issue. That's your big difference here. You're asking people to pay a lot more for vehicles when most of them think this county has too many vehicles to begin with. That's one of your problems. You're asking for people to pay when they just don't want to, when they see us wasting money. They see the millions invested in the Golden Corner Commerce Park with no immediate return on that investment. That's what they see. They see that we've spent money with little to show for it. It's not that they mind paying for another sheriff's vehicle. That's not the issue. The issue that over the years, we've blown a lot of money, their money, with nothing to show for it, and now we have to ask them for more because we don't have money for this. And we've resisted asking them for more because we wanted to tighten up as much as possible before asking for more. And I believe that we've tightened up considerably over the years. I truly believe.
I would
we've
agree. I would
okay?
agree with that, and I think from a wasteful spending, I mean, I do believe that the way that we, chop through our spending, Mr. Mulder did a lot of great things to get us down to where we need to be, and, I think some people, one of the statements, the email that you're reading, I mean, when's the last time you want an administrator to get up here and talk about the doom and gloom of what that is? And the whole idea is to stay out of that, to sit up here and be positive with each other, to fix and come up with it. I don't have an answer besides looking at the ways that we have cut spending, the ways that, not creating another problem. There'll be somebody else sitting in this seat from, who knows when, that'll sit here and say, well, we've got a problem, and it was done by my council person that was sitting there. I'm not blaming this on anybody. I'm just telling you that the reason why it didn't get done is because it's not the pretty side of government. It's not. And, I would much rather build stuff in parks and stuff like that I can say, hey, look at that. We paved that tennis court out there. Isn't that pretty? But this is part of, we have to figure out a plan. And, if it's not this year, then guess what, Mr. Hart? We're going to have the same problem next year, sitting around this same little table together saying, okay, now it's 2.5 million. And
We'll blame it on Paul.
you blame it on Paul?
That's okay. I don't mind taking responsibility for other people's actions. It happens all the time. I'm a lawyer.
So that's what I'm saying. Either, especially, when you directed that question at him, I mean, we're gonna be sitting here the same thing. I'm gonna be looking at you going, what we gonna do now? It's I don't even wanna know that number, so don't even anybody say that number. What that number is
4.5.
next year, so, come 2020, I'm sitting at the house. And, congratulations, Mr. Davis, there's 2 large tax increases. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to take advice from our department heads, from our administrator, from our finance director, and our citizens, and do what's best, because I don't like spending any more money on anything that I have to get. But I also know there's trouble coming down the tracks, and we see it coming, and I'm with you. I don't know how to fix it. because this is everybody's pocketbook that we're dealing with.
Well, there's no easy way to fix it. There's no painless solution. I mean, if we raise, I don't even think we could legally raise the millage high enough to fully fund this year. I think our statutory limit would come into play on that. But it's a problem. I don't have a solution. Tax increase, nobody wants a tax increase. The reassessment, the fact that the mill value did not grow to the extent that we hoped it would or expected it could, that's something out of our control. You know? What do you say? Not as much money is being produced in taxes as we hoped or expected, while our requirements, school resource officers who all need vehicles, new fire trucks, things that break, things that catch on fire. We have to fix those things. The public tells us we want school resource officers in every school. We say, okay, that'll be $700,000.
And
Okay,
they also
they're okay with
agreed
it.
to pay for that.
That's right.
They also agreed to pay for that,
Yep.
okay? Now, this is a tougher sell. I mean, I'm gonna put it out there amongst my constituents, and I'll see what they say, but this is gonna be a much tougher sell than the SROs ever was.
Nobody's.
What do we say? What do you say? Would you like to continue having reliable vehicles in the county or no? I mean, that's the sell. I don't know how else you sell it.
This is what it's gonna cost to maintain our vehicles over time.
This is what it will cost
No,
next year.
what's going to come at me is, why do we have 700 vehicles? You know, and, I mean, I get it, it's not just cars, it's equipment. It's stuff that people don't realize we even have.
And it's our responsibility to be able to answer these questions and say, well, what, you want to go through these and talk about them? I mean, some roads and bridges, we've probably got a lot more pieces of equipment than we do have employees. Because
That would be a correct statement also.
we don't have, I mean, we're not necessarily paving a road every day with two guys sitting on a paving machine.
That's true, but when you want to pave, you want your equipment to work. And you want to have safe access to get it to point A, from point A to point B.
Or what about when it ices and every piece of equipment we got
Now-
is having to work?
We still don't use every piece of equipment even when it ices. We try to keep the big trucks off the road because of liability reasons. But every pickup that can fit a snowplow has a snowplow on it. And if it's a severe enough event, they're on the road 24/7. I've been there. So, yes, sir, that's kind of important even to us. But what we're doing is the stuff that you see in red at the road department, what you need to look at is liabilities for when that piece of equipment is on the road. Because what we're bringing to you is, we know that that piece of equipment that's in red may not be up to par, but we're still having to use it.
And I'd love to know of all these citizens that are asking, why do we have so much equipment and why do we have all these vehicles? I'd be happy to sit down and talk with them. I'm sure Mr. Martin and Sheriff Crenshaw and Ernie and our other department heads could probably explain to that person or all those people out there that are apparently think we have too much equipment, why we have each and every piece of equipment. I mean, I can explain a lot of this stuff. I don't even know what some of these things are, though.
Yeah, and neither do I, but here's the deal with that, Mr. Kane. And we've talked about this before, and Mr. Davis and I were talking about this before this meeting started. I have people in my district that don't have adequate access to water, okay? In 3.5 years on council, I haven't been able to bring them closer to having access to water. You think they're going to want to pay the extra millage increase to fund all these vehicles when we can't give them something as simple as water?
Well, let me ask you, what is your solution to that water? What's
I don't
your-
have a good solution to that water either. I mean, I've requested over time that we try and help Salem bring water to the unincorporated parts of, District 1 that people, can use it at, but that's just not been a popular idea.
I've just heard you say it, and that's what I'm asking you, like, what's your solution to that? Because if it's like your number one thing, it's like,
Well, we've
what do
tried
you
to fund
see?
it before. We've tried to fund it before, using our debt millage. When I first came on council, we tried to fund that using our debt millage. And then we found out we couldn't use those particular types of bonds for that kind of project. So that fell through at that point in time. And without being able to bond it out, we were looking at some alternate grants. When those grants became available, and one of them was available through ACOG, the matching funds weren't available. Salem didn't have had only a portion of the matching funds. The county, I couldn't get the support from the county to help match the grant, so that grant fell through. And after a while, you kind of give up. I mean, you get tired of begging. So, 2 attempts at resolving that problem fell through.
Yeah, I hadn't heard you beg. I knew you talked about it. I just was wondering, like, what, because if you've got if a project is that important, and, we're sitting right here, and I agree with what you're talking about. People need basic necessities, but what is the plan to get it that way? And my concern with anything is when you deliver the product, then it costs X, Y, Z to get it to the houses. And that was one of the things that I was asking, with that, because you brought it up, I think this third time now. If it's a plan, if it's a project, how do we fund it? Because I don't know, I guess we run water lines through there, or I guess we would work with, you said Salem's route to do that? So, I don't.
But what I'm saying here is that, when you have people in your district who feel that they've been snubbed essentially by the county for something as simple as that, it's hard to get them on board with, this kind of a massive expenditure.
Nobody, I mean, I'm not sitting up here wanting to do it either. I mean,
So-
even from 2.08.
There's got to be, now focusing on a solution for this, there's got to be several different ways to fund this. Or maybe a combination of ways to fund this. A millage increase is always a possibility. The capital lease is always a possibility. What other possibilities are there?
Miss,
Money lady.
can we go buy some lottery tickets?
No, you're an elected official, Mr. Kane.
I know,
You cannot
I'm not
buy
saying
lottery
I would, I
tickets.
said we, the county. But, to go back to the water line issue, how much does it cost? What's the water line cost?
So what's that project? What was that?
At first, when we were going to fund it through the debt service, before we were aware that the bonds were not appropriate, we were going to set aside $500,000 for that. And then in the second attempt with the ACOG grant, they were only looking at $250,000. And then the whole ACOG grant thing fell through.
And
So
you're
I
saying-
haven't really revisited another plan for that because I sort of came to the conclusion that no matter what I came up with wouldn't work.
Well, I'm just asking because you're saying this council has failed to do things in District 1, which I don't even know what the plan is. I know what the plan was a $500,000 debt appropriation, which we found out was not legal. So state law prohibited us from doing that.
Doing that, yeah.
Right.
Okay, that was the first attempt. And then the second attempt was we sought the county's help to match the ACOG grant that would have also extended the Salem water lines. And Salem has a plan for extending their water lines beyond the town limits. And actually, they're not even coming up Route 11. They're actually going further from 11 in. Where the next school is, Eagle Ridge? It's on Crestwood. There's clusters of homes beyond Crestwood that, you know, can really benefit from municipal water, and they're outside the city limits. So that was actually, the original plan was to get some out in that direction. But, you know,
Well, I mean.
let's not worry about that right now.
Well, you brought it up,
because
I mean,
I think it's-
I brought it up.
and I'm happy to
as,
discuss it.
I brought it up as an example of why it's difficult to convince people that, you know, we need to increase the millage an extra 1.5 million, for an extra 1.5 million when they're not receiving basic services.
I think the same would be said if we are increasing millage to run water lines to Salem when we got people out in you know, District 4, District 5 that still struggle with on some of those basic needs too. My reason to bring that up is that would have been one of the things that, you know, maybe we need to add that to the strategic plan, because I don't think it was discussed. And if it's one of those big things that needs to be discussed, then I would have brought it up as that'd been my plan.
It was,
And-
it was part of our strategic plans a couple of years back, before you were on board, and then it sort of, you know,
Just died.
just kind of died, yeah. Mhm.
Well, and I mean, as we've seen, sometimes what our goals are as council don't always get funded, but I think one of the things that we have to continue to look at is you still need to have a plan in place if we're gonna go that route, and it's obviously a necessity, you know, some of this is, and that's what, I mean, we're looking down the, you know, the road, but we already know what's coming, and that's where I'm at. I mean, I see your point too. You know, is that to say, oh, well, if we put a water line in Salem, they'd be happy with the tax increase? That's not gonna be true.
No, it's not going to be true, but it'll be one step closer to meeting people's basic needs and getting them to understand that there are other basic needs that also have to be met. But it's hard to sell a vehicle plan when people are asking me for water.
Oh, it's hard to sell a lot of things in that budget. If you sit there and look at it, I mean, like I said, that's the uglier side of government.
So I'm going back to my original question. What are other funding options
Madam
for
Chair?
this plan? Yes.
Ms. Price and I have been throwing something around, so we're gonna muddy your water just a little bit. She is having some paperwork printed out, and we'll give it to each one of you when she gets it back in here. One thing that she presented to Mr. Mulder last year or a year or so, we have approximately 78,000 vehicles in Oconee County. They are counties our size that do charge taxes on those vehicles. If you would have charged $15 per vehicle, that'd give you $1.17 million. Just give you another scenario that you can think about. Greenwood County charges $19.19. We don't know why they charge such an odd amount. Darlington's $35. Georgetown's $30.
And what do they call this, a vehicle fee?
It's a vehicle fee,
Still 3 letters.
tax fee. It's the same thing. I mean, it all depends on how you're gonna look at it. I thought Anderson County did, but I was mistaken. We do not in Anderson County, but there's you another option. If you don't want to use the word fee or taxes, you can use the word fees on your vehicles. Now, $10, you know, whatever you so choose, Mr. Kane. Yes, sir.
I was gonna say, you know, if we're looking at a fee versus a tax, and we're concerned about the lowest income folks, this is
understand.
going to hit them worse than a tax increase.
That's true. That's a true statement.
So,
Uh,
I mean,
But
just to
then-
point that out.
Then again, somebody like Mr. Davis, who we know's got 2 vehicles, it would hit him at least 2 times where it wouldn't hit somebody else, maybe 1. Sorry about that, Mr. Davis. You walked into that earlier. And that's just, you're talking about another option. Ms. Bryce brought that up to me here several months back. May not could happen this year. That may not be something you want to think about. But at
And
least
that might
it's-
be something we can consider, actually, to go into a roads and bridges.
We wouldn't argue with that one bit. Kyle's been pushing for this, or Mr. Reed's been pushing for something like this, to kind of help with some of his paving projects, some of his other items. some of the equipment replacement, whatever it could do. But, there's another option that y'all can consider. I know it's in the ninth hour or the ninth inning or whatever you want to call it, but there's another possibility you can either think about this year or roll it over into next year.
Well, I appreciate y'all bringing this up.
Liddell's she'll explain it to you a little bit with the paperwork you got in front of you.
So the thought would be to move some funding out of the road maintenance fund into the general fund and then appropriate or designate this vehicle fee to repair the roads.
Correct. And you see the different, you could do the $15, which is at the bottom, the 20 or the 25. The far column on the right shows you the road maintenance 2.1 millage, what it has brought in and what it is budgeted at. And then on the left-hand side, you'll see the estimates there. And Ms. Hubbard had provided me with the number of vehicles. The green column in the middle is the difference of what was budgeted and what those fees can earn. And on the bottom, down at the $15 one, you'll see that the for 19, it'll raise about $15,875 more than the 2.1 mils.
At least we got them thinking.
I've seen this before.
If you want to kick the can one more year, you'd have maybe this option and the lease option. So.
This is, to me, this affects I just was doing a few percentage on there, because I'm just thinking about those people that rent, and not to say that the ones that own houses can afford more, because that's not always true, because a dollar is a dollar to everyone. But, you have, people that are, state housing and stuff like that, I know it's $15 a year, but I'm just sitting there, I was just trying to do an estimate on what that would, seems like it's more. And
I think the fee would impact lower income people more, just looking at it on a very basic level. If we're concerned about trying to,
But do we really know that? Do we really know that?
Well, if you're living in an apartment and you have a 1 mil increase, what does it affect you? How much does it affect you? Mr. Martin? If I'm renting a home or I'm living in an apartment, how much does a 2 mil increase affect me?
I think we come up with what's about $8.
how do they pay that, though? They're not,
But
it
they
doesn't,
not-
the
they
key
would not be
point
the
is, they're not
property
paying
owner.
that.
The renter is not the
Well-
property owner, but who knows whether the property owner is going to pass that increase on to the renter.
I've talked to
That
a
would be
number of
correct.
them.
If I understand it correctly, if you're renting, you don't pay.
Property taxes.
That
yeah.
is correct.
Yes. So if I own my home, that's where I'd have my property tax. That would be where the increase would be at. But
That's
if I'm
correct.
renting, I would not.
That is correct. And the reason why I asked that question, I knew the answer to it, I just want to make sure that I knew the answer to it, is, so if you are renting a home, yes, you are correct, that tax can be passed on. But you're talking about $8 on, if you're renting an apartment, yeah, I guess the same thing could happen, but you're talking about a guaranteed $15, okay? Here's the next thing. If you're a family of 4 living in there and you have 2 cars, that's $30 that family is paying that's living in that apartment, state housing or whatever it is, or rental house or whatever. So you've almost not quadrupled, but you're close to 3 times what they would probably be normally, or even have the ability if it's passed on from that person. And this kind of gets in the same manner of the reason why I wanted to change the percentage over from the school district. If the school district has an increase, who does it affect? Secondary homes, which is rental property, and commercial businesses. Where do they pass that money on to? People that are renting the home and their customers. So, one way or the other, you are correct that they're gonna pay it. That's why I'm not in this, I don't love fees. It's just another way of taxing people, and it doesn't always, in my personal opinion, end out doing what you want it to do.
And a heavier vehicle is gonna damage the road more than a light vehicle. So that's not taken into account either.
So those are some things that can be, considered. This is just a basic, something that we can look at, there again, if you so choose to do so. And it can be adopted just about any way you want it, by weight or size vehicle.
Well, I think it's understanding that we don't want to do the 1.457. I think we can all sit here and understand that. Is there something that we feel comfortable with adding that would possibly move everything toward some type of resolution prior to that 2021 capital lease program coming off? A meal. I say 1.5 million because it gets you at least somewhere.
I got a question. What if we already obliged ourselves for? I mean, how many, are we talking about, one of them was 2 meals, is that correct?
2.08.
Yeah, we're at
2.08.
2.08 at this point.
It actually depends on how much you want to do next year, Glenn, if you don't want to do anything this year. Because that's really what me and you need to think about. Because the problem's there. Is there anything in the roads and bridges that you can take off that you say, this one vehicle right here, I think we can get, if you had to choose one thing in there, you're not allowed to choose the cheapest.
To take off?
I mean, something we could
I
keep.
say the most important at
Okay,
this time.
I would appreciate that. That would probably be a better question to ask.
So if I had to pick the items of most importance, you'll see 20114 is the vehicle number. That's a 50-ton Evans trailer. That is the low boy that carries equipment from site to site. That is
Number one.
That is number one, absolutely. Number 2 would be 809, would be the 99 International.
What is it? Is that a dump truck?
It is, yes, sir. It's one of the oldest dump trucks. It does have some internal engine noise at this moment in time. We are biding every day we can get out of it.
And that one you could sell,
We would sell at surplus, yes, sir.
okay?
On this, 50-ton
Page 8.
trailer, low boy,
Yes, sir.
That's
you
number
got it
one.
replacing it
201 is one.
with 55,000.
That's correct. That is with a new trailer.
Well, we ever go on GovDeal and look at these?
We have, in fact, the trailer that we have right now, we actually have 2 low boys in the county, okay? The other one that we purchased from Pickens County several years ago, reboarded it, reworked the trailer. However, there has not been anything in the past year to find that will haul and do the 55 tons that we need to move the equipment. Some of the equipment in the county has gotten larger. There are some things that rock quarry that we cannot move due to laws and federal regulations. So the 55 ton will move most of our items. But to answer your question, yes, we have looked for a used one. I have definitely in the past year and a half been on the look for a new one to suit those needs. That is not something that you find, just a run of a mill of. It's not like a little tag-along trailer you put behind your pickup. And any of them that you do find used, you have to be careful of what kind of shape they're in. The problem we have right now is the neck. I have had, the neck's been broken, probably at least 6 times, okay? I have tried to have someone build a new neck for it. There's nobody that'll touch it just for simple liability reasons. Okay? We've plated it and plated it and plated it, and in fact, it's on restriction to only move some of the lighter equipment right now. I would not dare put 50 tons on it. It's more rated about 35 tons right now.
What are you renting?
Excuse me?
What are we renting right now? I know that we've got an off-road truck, a D5.
Actually, and again, you'd have to ask, Mr. Reed on exactly what roads and bridges or Mr. Martin, what they're renting, but the D5 is the county's.
If I'm not mistaken, the only thing that's being rented right now is the one articulated truck, and it's coming through, economic development. They're paying for that. And the D5, actually, it belongs to the rock quarry, which the road department's had since they bought it.
Well, there was another one there, I think it was a Komatsu back, say, a month ago.
I think the first time we rented, yes, sir, I think we did rent another little dozer, to try to get started. But I can't remember what size, I think it was a Komatsu.
And that comes out of the,
Economic development, yes, sir.
okay.
Madam Chair, can I make a proposal so we can move forward on this?
Sure.
So we don't bring the can back up? If we did, just to get us somewhere, if you did 7 of the 11 police vehicles, you're sitting at 245. Roads and bridges, if you did number 1, 2, and added a third at 310, that would bring you up to $555,000. And that would be just over a mil. 247. 7 of the 11 at 35. I think I did that right. I should have done that. 245.
So you're trying to keep us under a meal or at a meal?
I think that's, with respect to the citizens, I do believe that is what I'm comfortable doing. At 555 is just at a meal. And that at least, I think that's financially responsible of this council, and I think it begins a process.
I think we could probably work at that if that's something that council chooses to do. I would like to maybe try to say if we could maybe divide it up between sheriff, roads, and solid waste to try to get their excavator or that they need, just kind of let us.
So I would make a motion to add a millage to the vehicle replacement plan, per the administrator's recommendation on those vehicles to be replaced.
Second.
You adding 1 mil.
Yeah. I don't see any other way of doing it without me and you looking at each other next year trying to figure out what to do. So, and I think that's a whole lot better than a road fee, my personal opinion. I have a Jeep in my barn you'd find too, so.
I think that a mill was better than nothing, but we're still about $900,000 or so short. And that's still this fiscal year. That's not for next fiscal year.
That's correct.
So,
I might as well just sit over here. Mr. Kane, keep in mind, as we go forward and we replace these vehicles and this equipment, the cost, that $162,000 we've added over the past year to vehicle maintenance, I know it's not a lot, but please keep in mind, that will be able to go back to purchasing vehicles, not worrying about maintaining them. So, you talk about money, yes, $162,000 isn't a lot. If you add another $50,000 to that, you're over $200,000. That can go back to it. Not this year that we replaced, because again, it's a trickle-down effect. It would be that following year. So there's more money that could be put towards it.
Well, if that's the case, there's 11 vehicles. 70 for 2, 70 for 4, be 140 for 4, and you got 160.
You're talking about if we pass it this year and that money comes back to us for the following year. Correct?
Yeah.
Also, let me tell you what other, something else that would help is instead of the auction money that we get for selling the vehicles, and this is something just to think about in the future, is instead of it going back to a general fund, allocating it for capital replacement as well. Okay, and we don't have to use it that following year, but we can let that build when we do need it as well. So if roads and bridges, if we sell, $100,000 worth of roads and bridges equipment, it goes back into equipment, not into an open general fund. But you're talking about so I guess I'm not quite understanding. You're saying if we drop down to 7 vehicles this year, that's our 11 next year? Is that what you're saying?
That's what he proposed.
I did?
Didn't you say you want to drop it 7 vehicles? to
No.
7?
I'm talking, we're not gonna fix the problem. If the glass is empty, I'm putting a little bit of water in the glass to drink out of. I'm not proposing drop to 7. So we'll have sheriff's officers riding together with each other. So we'll have to get some scooters or bicycles or something. But, no, I'm not proposing that. I'm just proposing what I feel comfortable explaining to our citizens what we're trying to accomplish. And that's where I can't fix this overnight, but I believe it's a strategy that's financially responsible to do. And the reason why I said the 7 at 35 and then the other, and then I guess we changed it because I'll allow the administrator to make those recommendations. So it would just be certain amount of money that would go toward as they see fit, toward getting that back to where it should be.
Madam Chair, that 1 million can go to the Capital Projects Fund, a 12 fund, along with these monies that he's talking about, anything that's sold at the auction, anything that we receive money in from the insurance claims, all can go to this one fund, and it be designated to purchase only the capital vehicles. That mill will stay year after year until you change it in that one fund for that particular purpose.
You need me to add that to my motion? That'd be the creation of that fund's already there.
Madam Chair, if I may, I believe the fund is already there, and I think the essence of your motion was to essentially put $550,000 to be used. We don't know the full value of a mill right now, so I don't like talking about a mill necessarily because we're not going to know till September. But say approximately $550,000 into the capital projects vehicle replacement fund. That's going to appear as a recommended item on the budget for the full council to consider. And then, of course, that would be something that, as you discussed, would be within the county administrator's province to work with the various departments, work with Mr. Beck, and see what the most, what the primary, most urgent needs are. Do it that way. That's why Ms. Price said it would go towards a fund as opposed to putting it into particular departments and having to figure out how to shift that right now or on Tuesday.
And
But I think it needs to be 1 mil, even if we don't know the exact value.
Yeah,
That's
that'd be
fine.
fine. At least we'd know we have something going toward that designated fund.
that motion would state 1 mil.
Mhm.
Okay. Now we had a second there.
Okay, any other discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
So, Madam Chair, just to make sure we're clear, so it's gonna show up on it's gonna show up on the budget as 537. That's our estimated value of a mill at this point. Understanding that when the true value of mill comes around in September, it may,
It may be a tad higher or a tad
tad
lower,
higher.
but it'll still be a mill.
yeah, but so when you see that number 537, we're talking about a mill as we estimate it. Right.
Okay, what else?
Madam Chair, Code Enforcement Officer.
I thought we already added
already
him
had
in. Did we not add him
No,
in?
I've tried to
I
add it
think that was
last
the thing, an
meeting.
item to be discussed, and I don't want to prolong anything, but if we could take a 5-minute recess, it might help us to concentrate over here, at least me.
That's fine, we can recess for a few minutes.
Motion to recess.
Second.
Second. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Where we're at, code enforcement?
Code enforcer.
Is that, now, that would fall under sheriff, correct? No.
No.
Who would that report to?
Scott Carroll,
Scott Carroll.
yes, sir.
Okay.
Or planning's in that general location down there, one or the other. It fell under the sheriff department. You're talking about someone carrying,
I thought for some reason we talked about litter enforcement and stuff like that under that same officer. Is that not true? No? That was another officer?
probably.
I believe the sheriff has stated that he hopes to have one of those three road officers be an additional
Litter
litter
officer?
enforcement officer.
Okay, all right. This would be a building codes and ordinance,
Yes,
correct? Ordinances that we pass, that's what we're working on?
that's kind of the direction I've been told. That's kind of some of the job descriptions we've been looking up throughout other counties.
Is it a common position in other counties?
Very much so, yes. My son may be going to work for Greenville County as codes enforcement here in a couple of weeks.
So what do we do for that position now for code enforcement? Who enforces those codes?
To be honest with you, right now, I don't know if there's anyone other than the sheriff and Scott Carroll and just a few folks that we have in-house that enforce what codes we have or that we won't enforce.
Mr. Kane, is that a recommendation from, I was trying to remember where that exactly came
Mr.
from.
Mulder suggested that. And we kicked the can down the road because we didn't want to spend any more money. In fact, last year we cut 15 positions.
I think
Didn't
last
add
year,
any.
the year before last one, last year.
And that was clearly a waste of time, because we added 10 times more than that this year. You know,
I
we
won't
tried
disagree
to
with
save
that.
a buck, and now we added a whole bunch of positions, so we saved nothing
Well, I
for
think,
a very short period of time.
I think sometimes though, what the goal was is to work at probably more of a restructure than it was to cut, but I know that.
That's true.
What, when we went through that, it was cut $700,000. The instructions, I thought, were to cut $700,000 out of the budget. And I think through some of the things that we did were positive, and some of them we've obviously found that we needed them. And obviously, if you look at a lot of other counties' budgets, they're spending just as much money in public safety as we are. And due to the decisions that this council's made, especially with the SRO officers, it's putting a lot of pressure on several other counties because it's not a need, it's a necessity. As we move forward, and I think the choices that we're making is going to change the outlook on what I think what house we bought when we came in here. To me, we're rebuilding, a home. It wasn't falling in, but I didn't want the outside of it to fall off. So I think we've done a good job at, getting there. And it's not easy. I mean, nothing up here is easy. Mr. Martin, will you give a clarification of where we sit with that mill? There was some discussion. I didn't want to have the discussion during the recess where we sit with that change. It's 3.08.
3.08, yes, if I understand that is correct. Now, I will have to, Madam Chair, on codes enforcement, I'm not saying there's not a need by no means. There may be a chance where if we were to work closer with the sheriff department and some of our folks in building codes that we could do a better job at some of these issues we have within the county. I'm not gonna be able to sit here and tell you that I've done a lot of research on it because everything else that's been going on, but it's something that may be able, we may can work it out in-house.
Question. How much is that on a $100,000 house, 3.8 mils, 3.08 mils?
12?
It'd be
12.
$12, $13, 12 and a half, between $12 and $13.
Well, this poor fellow that Mr. McCall bailed out for $60 is gonna have a rough time making 72.
Madam Chair, it'd be my recommendation that with a lot of the things that we have done through this budget, that I would like to leave the budget as it stands right now. And I don't know if that would be, that's not really a motion, but I think we've done as many hours as we spent on this and where we're at. I think we've done a lot of things to help right the ship. And I know it's tough. It's just, it is what it is.
Make that a motion.
So that would be a motion to adjourn this meeting then.
Fine,
Second.
all right. All in
Mr.
favor
Root?
then?
Aye.
Aye.
I just want to make sure, when I say keep the budget as it stands, that's as recommended.
What we've recommended today.
It-
No
Yeah.
additional, no additional code
He
enforcement.
feels that's
I'm
enough
just
for one
saying that
evening.
I think that's what, I was, as it stands, for what, 3.08. So,
Did y'all already vote on?
motion to adjourn,
Could you suspend that before you vote on it, just real quick?
hold, suspend that.
Thank you. Is this a budget neutral notion? Mr. Shirley's not here this week, and he wanted to bring up a position addition that y'all would have to vote on to add a position at Chow Ram. They're short-staffed, looking at an expansion. It's a position that's been looked at, evaluated for a number of years. The belief is, and we're working on the numbers, won't bring it to you if it's not budget neutral, meaning there would be no addition. That through state ATAX funds and working with the numbers that are going to PRT projects, that with the High Falls renovations, ATAX funds going there, salary funds going to fund this position, that we can get it done without any budget increase. So I just want to put that.
I'd make a motion to add that position, budget neutral.
Yeah, we'll have that, we'll have that for you on your next one. We'll have more detail on Tuesday night. We'll have more detail about it. It's just to add a position to Chow Ram, budget neutral.
Second. Do we need a motion and second on
That's
this?
what he was asking for.
You
You got
could.
one.
It's not
You
gonna
got
hurt.
one.
It's not gonna hurt.
You
Yeah.
got a
And
second.
that way, if you have any other questions, we can answer them as best we can at this point. We need to flesh out
Okay.
some stuff.
Any
'cause it's-
other discussion?
You need to take a vote on that just in case.
I know. All in favor?
Aye.
Any other budget neutral additions?
Unsuspend, adjournment, motion to
Sorry about
adjourn.
The next council meeting is 19th or 26th?
26th would be
No.
19.
19.
What?
Tuesday.
Oh,
week
but
from
we're
tomorrow.
changing the if we're changing the millage, we have to have the 15
15
days.
days, which is the 26th, so we can't have a reading on the 26th. We cannot have a reading on the 19th if we had,
What was your question?
He was there.
Was exactly that.
Okay.
Yeah.
The 19th or the 26th.
we cannot have a third reading on the 19th. So the 26th would be exactly, which is why the pressure was to have this meeting to make sure
Sooner
we
rather
had
than later.
15 days in between. So we can have a meeting on the 19th. I mean, that's your, or we
And that's a
can,
regular council meeting.
Yeah, we've got a very long agenda, we got a full slate of things on the 19th.
So the third reading would be
On the 26th?
the 26th with the public hearing.
Yeah.
Is that right, Madam Chair?
Mm-hmm.
But there'll be a meeting on the ninth, so the answer is both.
The answer is both.
That's what it says.
I will be out of town on the 26th.
The 26th. So, it's the 29th that our
I'll be out
meetings?
of town on the 29th,
Oh, okay,
the whole week off.
the whole week. Oh, all right.
You gonna be here? Nah, we got it covered.
I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn again. So, I don't, because we continue to discuss business after the adjournment, I wanted to make sure that that was part of me, so I'll make a real, true motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm going